Calling the roll, Mr. Brady?
Here.
Mr. Germana?
Here.
Mr. Gallagher?
Here.
Mr. Schron?
Here.
Ms. Conwell? Here. Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Rogers?
Here.
Ms. Simon? Ms. Conley?
Here.
Mr. Greenspan?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Here.
There is a quorum.
Thank you. Has there been anybody signed in for public comment in regards to any item that are on the agenda?
No, Mr. Chairman, no one is signed in to speak.
Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes of the August 28th, 1912? 2012? Yeah, I knew I was getting old. That's right. 2012 meeting.
Motion to adopt.
Been moved. Seconded by Mr. Brady. Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, other than Rip Van Winkle. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. The one single item, if it could be read into the record for today's meeting.
Ordinance number 2012-0011, an ordinance establishing a casino revenue fund for the purpose of collecting and expending proceeds from gross casino revenues and determining the uses for such proceeds and the timeframes for such uses.
Thank you. And I have a substitute ordinance to replace the current ordinance that's been just recently read in the record. And this substitute does bring in a second alternative for early withdrawal of the funds and expenditure on other projects throughout the county. So I will now move that we substitute the current ordinance with the ordinance that's been distributed to the council.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. For discussion purposes, this language to move it forward in the second period is similar to that of the first period, with the addition that it allows those funds to be expended on anything within the county that would be coming forth as projects before this council. So other than that, it's the same ordinance with the exception of having the ability to bring funds forward out of that second period for other projects beyond that initial period of time. Is there any other discussion? I think it's in keeping with the suggestion that Mr. Brady put in for the first withdrawal, and now it has a second period of withdrawal.
Mr. Chair, just for the purpose of people watching in the audience, maybe you could, or I'm willing to just do a recap of the points, because some people may not be aware of all the various provisions. Absolutely.
And if we recall, this started with the suggestion from the county executive that we would have the funds going towards downtown projects from East 25th to West 25th. Then this council has since introduced a substitute ordinance on two separate occasions, and those and the substitute ordinance that's before us today will hit on the initial period would be to build reserves after we've learned how the funds are going to come flowing in through the full casinos being online. That period would begin with the July 1st of this year and go for the period of 2014, July of 2014. During that period of time, we would be able to identify what kind of reoccurring revenues are coming into the account and be able to better plan for it. Following that period, the county executive would then spend money for the next 2 years in the areas that he identified, which would be the East 25th to the West 25th period of time. There has been a request in the last substitute ordinance, which was to allow for if a project from the county executive should be recognized by this council and brought forward by the county executive during that 2-year period when the savings are taking place after the first year, that money could be pulled forward for a project within the East 25th or West 25th area. This second introduction is after the first 3 years, but before we go to the full 4 years. If any council person wants to bring forward a proposal and a program that for a program any place in the county, rather than waiting for the full 4 years, if that project would come before this council, that it could be pulled forward. So I hope that summarizes what we're discussing here. In short, it is to build reserves, it is to use it for the downtown area, and if projects would be, during the next 2-year period, if a project would be needed, that the county executive felt we would accelerate that reserve period, and if the council felt there was a program in that second 2-year period, that too could be accelerated.
And also just want to point out that the money will be put into a separate fund that's provided for in the ordinance, so it won't just go into general revenue. It will be in a separate segregated fund. And then after the date of July the 1st, 2016, the 2 items according to the ordinance will be to promote economic development in any area of the county, and also to provide additional funds for educational initiatives, including the Cuyahoga County Scholarship Fund.
Right. Those are alternatives that this council at the last meeting felt, rather than restricting, it's inclusive, it's not exclusive to include or exclude either one of those activities. Any comments or questions by Mr. Brady? Yes.
Just to put it my own way, I think, remember when the legislation came, of course it was just a place to start, but it would have dedicated all these funds, even though we don't know how much money it is we're dedicating, perpetually to a certain area that certainly could have, as the area mostly of the downtown where we would expect that there might be a need for some additional funding to help projects. What the changes initially did was limit that amount of time in several ways. First, limit the time that any of it could be spent so we can see what it is that's coming in. Secondly, it was to limit the amount, the time that would be required for it to be spent only within certain boundaries. As we moved along and discussed it, we tried to find ways to make it as flexible as possible, is the way I would put it, as flexible as possible to meet most of the concerns that we were hearing from members of the council.
Exactly. Again, build reserves, support the county executive, support those principles of the council. So I think that's what we have in place with this second substitute. Any other comments or questions? Mr. Greenspan?
Yeah, I mean, I still have some of the same challenges I've had in the past. I find it interesting that with county economic development funds, we try to encourage local participation from various communities as far as in our loan or programs. Mr. Gallagher actually asked that question this morning in the Board of Controls, yet we don't have any provision here requiring or requesting Cleveland to participate in any funds. We put utilization of our funds towards any projects within this, I hasten to use the term Fitzgerald zone, just this zone of 25th to 25th and so forth. So I find it interesting that we don't put it here, we don't have that requirement in here, yet we require it or recommend it elsewhere. And also I still have my concerns regarding economic development efforts within the next 2.5 years in other areas of the county that are challenged. So some of those concerns, none of those 2 concerns have been addressed in here, and I still have those same issues.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes.
Mr. Chair, I actually have the same issues as Councilman Greenspan, but one of the issues may be resolved by way of enabling the executive and/or council to have the ability to come back with a proposal prior to these dates, with a proposal, and have the council's discretion to determine whether we should fund projects that come up, economic projects. What if something happens in the next 12, 15 months that's not in the zone, but it's something that might not come under the economic fund, but it would come under something that's vitally important? Why wouldn't we want council to have some flexibility to say, yeah, we like this, it's in Councilman, Gallagher's district, and it's something that would be revitalizing to the entire county. I'm not sure why we want to keep tying our hands. I mean, we're somehow bound in this paradigm that we're bound by the executive's proposal somehow, and I'd like to have flexibility. We have a framework. I think if we have a consensus that, yeah, we probably want to take advantage of the boon in downtown Cleveland right now, but why are we binding our hands as council? Why can't we come back if something comes up to say, yeah, the funds are here, we think this is a good idea? I think that might make sense instead of really boxing us in.
The only boxes that is for the, under this proposal is to commit to savings for 2 years, and the third year in the proposal, if you see something after that third year that would facilitate bringing it forward, all it is you're committing to support the county executive's proposal for downtown for the initial period, is what this amounts to. And then after within that third year, if you find a program and a proposal that merits it, you could bring it forward to this council.
I understand what the boxes are. That's what I'm saying. I'm not, why do we have to have a box? I guess that's what I'm saying. We're buying into this idea, and I guess some of us do, that there should be this box around this region, and I think if we give council discretion to say, maybe we don't want to be boxed in 15 months.
Well, the initial period was to save funds, and I believe that there was a general consensus that you would have a saving period to generate because you don't even have two of the casinos are not even online, and the fourth one won't go online until next year. So that was the intent, to build and to identify what the cash flow is going to be for that first 2-year period.
Dan, Mr. Chair, well, in Section 5, we give the discretion to the executive to propose spending prior to June 30th, 2014, and what I'm suggesting is perhaps that why not have council be able to bring forth their own proposals within that time. We have just as much ability to bring something forward, and we're only giving an early proposal to the executive, so why not give us that ability? These
are my thoughts as to why, and that's why my proposal is this way, that the county executive, we have moved the county executive from being all funds on infinitum to a fairly limited focus out there. And so we're supportive of his desire to do things downtown in reflection of the casino. And then after that, it's reflecting what I think this council wanted to have, with some flexibility and options after that period of time. And so,
well, I'm just suggesting to my colleagues that perhaps we should have the same ability, at least to bring something forward. If something really extraordinary comes up, which, on my horizon right now, I don't see anything, but that's all I'm suggesting, is to keep the framework, but give some flexibility to council, not just the executive.
any other comments from anybody?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I have been on record that I think, because of the way of the framework of the distribution of these casino funds, where our county allocation is cut in half because of the host city. And I spoke to the collaboration by the city of Cleveland. I'm just wondering if there's been any movement with the development department as to any collaboration that Cleveland is coming up with this downtown area. We could get some feedback from the administration. Has there been any development with collaboration from the city of Cleveland?
Mr. Kelly, are you comfortable talking on this issue?
Yeah, absolutely. Nathan Kelly, Department of Development. Every project that the county has done inside the city of Cleveland, real or proposed, has had a significant investment from the city of Cleveland, both through hard dollars and through other incentives, including TIF financing or tax abatement, which is sacrificing the increment of growth in order to get the deal done. The city of Cleveland has identified downtown housing as a priority. And I know that they offer 15-year tax abatement as a rule on new residential, and are pretty liberal with tax increment financing. Any deal that we would do, of course, is a negotiation. And in order to get a deal done, that would require to get other partners to the table. The county executive proposes that we emphasize downtown development because To use an analogy, it's the seed of the apple, and the rest of the fruit grows around that seed. And I think that our region proliferates with a strong core. And so as we can strengthen the core, that's why we want to emphasize downtown development for these critical years. But we wouldn't, it would be a stray from prior practice if the city and a developer were to ask the county to participate in a deal where the city hasn't already stretched its limit. And that, by the way, that has been the case when we work with cities outside the city of Cleveland. With the Lincoln Electric deal, for example, Euclid, put in a pretty significant investment of their own in order to make that deal happen.
And to Mr. Greenspan's concern, the history of deals that we have done through the county at this point in time has always had a partner in the city wherever the deal is being done, or predominantly have a partner with the city, whether it be Euclid, Highland Heights, City of Cleveland, so on and so forth?
In Cleveland, it's been a universal. Okay. But that's always been the case. There are some cities that have no economic development means. There's other deals that, if you think of all the volume of deal making that's occurred over the past near 2 years, a lot of them, including workforce or other funding sources, wouldn't have direct city involvement. But I can provide that list to the council to demonstrate what municipal participation has occurred in every deal that's happened with the county. But we're trying to leverage resources, and that means other people's money. So believe me when I tell you, the first part of the negotiation, when we're asked for money, is, well, who else is in?
So to Mr. Greenspan's question, you can give him the assurance that 100% of the deals through the City of Cleveland where this first period of monies would be expended have had the City of Cleveland participating.
To date, the City of Cleveland has participated in every deal that the county has been in inside the City of Cleveland that I'm aware of. And I can't imagine a deal of scale that, first of all, with this feedback, to begin, gives me the cover to be able to say, unless you have demonstrated you've exhausted your own local resources, I'm not comfortable bringing it to council as part of a strategy to make sure that all public partners are in. By the way, we'd want the state involved where possible, too.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Mr. Kelly, then, in order to give you some more cover and feedback, part of what I'm hearing from my colleagues is just, I don't think anybody's assuming that the City of Cleveland and Cuyahoga County sort of go their own ways and don't have any communication, but I think people are anxious and looking for more as we move forward, a lot more information on what the what kind of coordination is taking place between the City of Cleveland and Cuyahoga County around what potentially may be some large investments by the county in the downtown area in the very near future.
Well, not to channel my inner Chris Warren, but we have been very deliberate about not committing resources that the council hasn't yet contemplated as a tool for us to use. So we haven't created a mechanism for weighing those projects yet because we didn't want to preempt a decision and legislation from the council. On large deals, we meet monthly with our stakeholders in economic development that include the state, Team NEO, the City of Cleveland, and others for what we call our deal team meeting, where we review kind of a pipeline of deals. And those are big, larger economic development projects or leads that might come our way. And then, of course, there are projects that are still in the planning stages that I'm sure eventually will come with formal requests for funding. But I can't speculate on the limit of what those would be.
Mr. Giurbano?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, to Mr. Kelly, City of Cleveland gets 5% automatically because it's a host city. And then, of course, the way this is all broken down, in counties of cities over, the largest city over 80,000 gets half of the county money. And in this particular case, it's the city of Cleveland. So besides the 5% as the host city, they're getting half of Cuyahoga County's allocation, which is around 11%. I personally buy into the fact that we want to have impact, that we've got a convention center and medical mart, that we are going to be drawing conventions here. You know, if it's not vital downtown, I could see that people will come once, but if the experience is not good, they're not coming back. So, you know, at least for my vote, people are asking me, well, you know, you're from Parma. How can you be supporting putting this money downtown? And I keep saying that it's impact. We've got to have downtown vital because people are coming to the casino, they're coming to the convention. We want them to come back. And, you know, the whole thing, the idea of the seed, there's plenty of people from the suburbs that are working downtown that are part of this convention that are to come, and the casino revenues and so forth. So the point is, we need to have, you know, some signal from Cleveland that, you know, if Cuyahoga County is going to put all their eggs into this district here so that we have impact, we'd like to have some match, like Representative Greenspan was saying.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Kelly.
To the councilman. I have three things to say. One is I will commit the third half of funding to Parma. That was a joke because there's only two halves, and half of it goes to a city over 80,000 residents. I actually have four things. My next joke will be funnier. Secondly, I would say any deal that we bring to council, you will ask the question, what is our partnership with the city? And if that answer is unsatisfactory, then don't approve the funding. The last part is, and I think that sometimes we've lost what a great signal this is that, backing up a little bit, the significance of the discussion is that we're focusing these dollars on growth. And if you look at the other counties in the state, I'm not aware of others that are saying we're earmarking all of this revenue for growth rather than balancing our own budgets. So I'm glad that we're having that conversation, and I think being able to commit to growth is a very strong signal about the direction of the county.
Other comments? I will just reiterate the loud and clear. I think the administration has heard that this council wants participation wherever it's, and that's going to go the same when we get to the second phase. If monies are going to any of the suburbs, my assumption will be you will have asked that same question, Mr. Greenspan, of participation from the suburb that you're asking for the city of Cleveland when these dollars go out.
Well,
so I just hope that we're being universal in our request, that it goes both now and in the future. And as Mr. Kelly indicates, there's nothing that's going to get passed that doesn't have to go through this council. And I know that universally you ask, and as do I, what is the local participation? And we ask that every time. So Mr. Kelly, I think, has probably heard it loud and clear that will be something whenever he comes here to this council to present how he wants to spend, suggesting how to spend the council's the money through this council, that you're going to have that match is going to be right there. My always concern with fixing legislation with matches or dollars or percentage is that every deal is different to some degree, and it needs to be adjusted based on that degree. So with that, yeah, Ms. Simon? Mm-hmm.
Clarification that there's a difference between the suburbs outside of Cleveland having to match up versus the city of Cleveland. I think colleague Greenspan's point was the city of Cleveland's already getting a lot of the revenue, and the inner rings are getting nothing. I just want to make that distinction because I just wanted to clarify. You're comparing apples and oranges, not. So I just want to be clear. There's a difference.
Yeah, my point on matching is not that you would match it dollar for dollar, is that there would be some form of participation in that match, whether it's 2%, 5%, whatever it happens to be, whether it's tax abatement, whether it's some form of recognition that economic development is important to that community.
I don't doubt that. I just wanted to clarify that they're two separate issues. Well, I mean, City of Cleveland's getting a big chunk of the casino revenue, and the suburbs are not. So I think that was the point of Councilman Greenspan. I'm sorry, I'm speaking for you.
No, Mr. Chair, if I can. And generally, I don't like using that word, but generally, that's correct in the statement as far as a match being concerned from all communities. But Ms. Simon hit it on the head, is that Cleveland's getting, of the total tax dollars from casino revenue coming back to the county, Cleveland's getting 61% of that. We're getting 39%. So in total. So I think our participation with Cleveland is a little different than it would be with the suburbs in that if their philosophy is the same as ours to devote casino revenue towards economic development efforts, then they're already starting ahead before we even talk about the 15% they've already allocated to their communities. Which they've already done, at least that's what's been reported. So that's a little different. So I want to make that distinction. But if the intent here, and Mr. Kelly has said that, and I think we agree that there would be some type of municipal match, whatever that may be. If the intent is that, then why don't we? I don't want Mr. Kelly to come to us and say we've got this deal, and it's an ugly deal because there's no match, and puts the onus on us to say no, whereas if we give the guidelines up front to the administration by codifying it in the legislation, then he knows he can't make a deal to bring to us without some type of municipal match. And that's on that subject. Remember, I mentioned there were two items that I was concerned about. The second item had to do in Section 5 with the request for early spending. There very well may be, and I think we all agree, there very well may be a project that comes up where this money may be impactful. I could think of 2 or 3 projects off the top of my head around this county where some type of county participation today would be impactful. And to that end, to say that the executive is the only one who may make a request, I too would like to broaden that, but I would also like to take the territory out on the early spending and just say, hey, if the council or the executive brings forward a project anywhere in the county with the first 2 years and we agree that it's impactful, then we should be able to utilize those funds for that purpose. So that's, once again, those are my thoughts. City, a match, and then opening it up to be more where the territory basically the boundaries of the county within the first 2 years, and anybody can bring the project forward. Well,
that's at this point in time, hearing you and Ms. Simon, sure. If we can go through with the substitute legislation, and then if you wish to, the two of you put forth an amendment on that section, there's no reason you couldn't be heard at this point. But is there any other comments in regards to the substitute legislation as it's currently presented? Hearing no other comments, call for the roll. Pardon? The motion is to substitute the original the substitute legislation with the new substitute that allows for 2 periods of for early withdrawal of the funds that's in the reserve account. Yes is to have the substitute legislation. A no is that we will still have only 1 period of early withdrawal, which is currently in the legislation that's on the floor.
All right, approving the proposed substitute. Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Germana?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Schron?
Yes.
Ms. Conwell?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Ms. Simon?
Yes.
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Mr. Greenspan?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Okay, the substitute legislation is now before the council, and the substitute legislation would now be called for as far as voting out to take before for the second reading for the council. Is there a motion to move for bringing it out of committee, the committee of the whole, to have a second reading at tonight's meeting?
I'm certainly willing to make that motion. Is that necessary? It is? Okay.
It is. Is there a second? Second,
Can we,
Mr. Gallagher? Yes.
Mr. Chairman, can we put the stipulation that it goes back to the committee? goes to second reading and back to committee to see if there's any other amendments that we want to put. I'd like to have that as part of the motion, that it'd be second reading and back to the committee of the whole.
I guess that certainly can be done by the council tonight at the meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I respect the councilman's perspective, but we've had a good conversation. I don't think there's much mystery left to what people think about this, even if they're not completely satisfied. I think probably all 11 of us could write our own bill. But we're now 3 months into this, and being a member of the committee, I don't know what more there is to discuss on your committee, Mr. Chairman, about this.
Yeah, unless there's an overwhelming desire to amend it at tonight's meeting to send it back for second reading to the committee, I would think that can be done at this evening's meeting if necessary. Now, at this point, we have moved and seconded to bring this out for second reading. Is there any amendments that wish to be brought forth for this before voting on that?
Well, I do want, if I can, Mr. Chair, move that Section 5 allow council to make their own proposals prior to June 30th, 2014 for any area in the county for council to have that same ability as we're giving to the executive.
Ms. Simon, would you then say, notwithstanding Section 2, prior to June 30th, 2004, the county executive and council?
Or council, yeah, may propose spending monies from the casino reserve fund on specific downtown district.
Mr. Chair, if I could, are we still discussing this?
There hasn't been a second yet.
All right.
No, I was just trying to articulate with the help of Council President what I was looking to change. And it would be to add council in Section 5 and to also allow them to propose projects in the downtown district and outside the downtown district development projects.
I would just comment just to remove the word down. I'm on the same page you. Remove just the downtown district designation. So reserve fund on specific development projects,
Okay.
period.
Okay.
And then if that's amenable, I'll second that.
That's amenable to me.
That
So basically, we would just be taking out downtown district, that's in quotes in Section 5, is that correct? And council.
Simply adding the language. And county council.
Council.
Okay, so Section 5, request for early spending, A, correct, in Section A?
Section 5A, the second line, yes.
Notwithstanding Section 2 above, prior to June 30, 2014, the county executive and county council may propose spending monies. Or county council may propose spending monies from the casino reserve fund on specific development projects. Council shall determine whether any specific project justifies an earlier than anticipated expenditure of funds, period.
Yes.
I'm not going to do it.
Be the motion I would make.
I'll second that.
Mr. Chairman.
moved and seconded. Yes, Mr. Brady.
This, I don't want to argue about how many angels dance on the head of a needle here, but this amendment basically just turns the whole bill, the whole thrust, the whole ordinance on its head. This is without negotiation. This is a compromise with the executive. Now we're going to give in the bill as it is. We are giving the executive some of what the executive wants. In the proposal, we are giving the executive none of what the executive wants. And so it seems to me that I will certainly oppose this amendment, not because people in my district wouldn't be just as fervent about, wanting to see some of this money spent on Lorraine Avenue somewhere, but because in trying to satisfy the executive's need to have a protected amount of funding for some amount of time for downtown. I find myself in an unusual position of being a downtown booster, but this is what I think is a fair compromise with the county executive and gives us, as a council and the executive, plenty of flexibility going forward.
At this point, I know we've heard from Ms. Simon and Mr. Greenspan on this, so I think that we understand your amendment. If we could have an opportunity to hear from other folks, because I think we have a pretty clear understanding of.
I have nothing more to add to the discussion.
Thing, Mr. Chair, if I would, is the compromise I see is, it's a three-way compromise. It's among the colleagues, and it's with the executive. So the compromise still gives precedent and preference to the executive, and the compromise is with him, but it's also with us, because we all, I hope, can reach a consensus. So it gives flexibility to council, and it gives the executive a preference over the funding. And it's always comes back to us in the next couple years how this money is allocated. But the preference is to the executive and to downtown.
Is there any other comments? Hearing none, I think we've heard the two positions in regards to this. Call for the roll on the amendment to add the language as indicated by Ms. Simon. Please call the roll.
Calling the roll. Mr. Brady?
No.
Mr. Germana?
No.
Mr. Gallagher?
No.
Mr. Schron?
No.
Ms. Conwell?
No.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Ms. Simon?
Yes.
Ms. Conley?
No.
Mr. Greenspan?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
5 yeas and 6 nays.
The motion to amend does not carry. Motion to vote this piece of legislation out for a second reading at tonight's meeting. It's been moved and seconded, I believe. Yes, Mr. Miller?
I would just make a comment that it appears that if we vote this on tonight's agenda, I don't think it's on the printed agenda. So at the council meeting, we'd have to make a motion to add it to the agenda, which we can certainly do.
Yeah, and I think there was intent to put it on, but there was, with all the things that are going on, I think it just was a hiccup on there. So we're not doing anything that I don't believe that the council president was not thinking potentially would be done. So with that, call the roll, please. Okay, the motion on the floor that's been moved and seconded is to vote out ordinance 02012-0011 as amended, as substituted, excuse me, in today's meeting for a second reading at tonight's council meeting. And we'd have to obviously move the agenda for tonight's meeting. Is that correct?
Okay. Calling the roll. Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Germana? Yes. Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Schron?
Yes.
Ms. Conwell?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Ms. Simon? Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Mr. Greenspan?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Is there any miscellaneous business that anyone has to bring before the committee of the whole? Seeing how we only had one item for initiating this committee of the whole, I don't know if there'd be anything that would be miscellaneous that would be relevant to the topic of the whole, but if there is any. Hearing none, is there any other public comment from anyone not related to the agenda?
No, there is no public comment.
Seeing nothing, or hearing nothing before we have a grand total of 16 minutes before our meeting. I adjourn the meeting. Yeah.